Happy Monday, everyone. Welcome today. I'm Sam Beni, Head of Innovation at TechNation. Who knows who are TechNation? Hands up. But just a handful of people, that's unexpected. Don't be shy. All right, so we are the growth platform for tech companies and leaders. And we have supported over 1,000 companies through our growth programs, which we have from pre-seed to pre-IPO companies. 1/3 of all UK unicorns being part of our programs. We've got one of them here. That's awesome to have Paul, who's a unicorn, who was running a unicorn for a while now, so it's awesome. And I just wanted to mention that we've got all of our programs. Again, if you go to technation.io, open for applications. This is only for 28th of June. So if you're running an innovative company in different stages and sectors, please visit our website and apply. We've got only 2 weeks to send your applications, and you have to wait for another year to apply. So please do that. I'm just going to pass it to the amazing panelists we've got today to introduce themselves, who they are and what you do. So starting with Paul.
Hello everyone, I'm Paul Taylor. I'm founder and CEO of Thought Machine.
Yeah, please tell us about what you do at
you want a little bit more?
Please go for it.
What Thought Machine does?
Minutes, yeah.
Okay, so Thought Machine is a fintech company headquartered in London. In fact, we're just about 15 minutes walk from here, so it wasn't too much of a difficulty getting here. It started in 2014. We have 500 people globally, 400 of them based in London. The headquarters is based in London. And we're a B2B fintech company, and our product is a cloud-native core banking platform. So we build the fundamental platform which runs banks, it runs the ledgers, it runs the product engine, and we sell this to banks. And we sell this both to established banks, JP Morgan Chase, Lloyds Bank, Standard Chartered Bank, and fintechs, Money's, Curve, and people like that.
Fantastic. Please be.
So hi everyone, my name is Dr. Bakshi. I'm a primary care physician by background, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of See the Signs. So See the Signs is a clinical system that uses AI to identify patients at risk of cancer at the earliest and most curable stage of the disease. We started See the Signs about 5 years ago, and very much in response to me recognising and seeing a lot of patients dying in primary care as a result of late cancer detection. Currently, the system's being used across the National Health Service within the UK. We've also been recommended by NHS England as a cancer system to improve earlier cancer detection. And last year, we diagnosed about 10,000 patients with cancer earlier.
Wow, awesome. Thank you, B.
Hi, my name is Steve Phillips. I'm CEO and founder of Zappi. We're an enterprise software system for consumer insights. So we help creators at large enterprises, large global enterprises typically, help them iterate and improve and optimize products, services, communications, packaging prior to launch. So before they go out to market, making those as strong as they possibly can be. And we tend to be very global. About 70% of our revenue and client base is in the US. We've got engineering teams here and in Cape Town. So.
Awesome.
Hello, so I'm Anthony Baker, CEO and founder of Satellite View. So Satellite View is going to launch a satellite, or many satellites, into space that can detect the heat emissions from any building on the planet. And this is really useful if you care about where in the world we're wasting energy. So everyone who's declaring net zero is not actually measuring anything. So we can measure any building and tell people what their carbon footprint is today. We can tell them where to spend their first money to make things better, to go and do some retrofits on these worst buildings. And then, is it really happening? So we check to make sure that those retrofits are happening, or down your supply chain, those Scope 3 emissions, are they as good as they say they are? So we're trying to help people avoid greenwashing. We're launching this time next year on SpaceX. So we have a contract with Elon Musk, and yeah, we're ready to go.
That's great. Yeah, great to hear SpaceX and Elon Musk there being mentioned. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Anthony. I've got a question for you, Paul, regarding your growth journey. Right?
Yep.
Thought Machine is a unicorn. It's recently valuated at £2.2 billion. Tell us about the journey. Tell us about what were the biggest challenges you faced going from startup to scale up to a unicorn.
Yeah, well, the first thing I should say is Thought Machine is not my first company, right? So Thought Machine is my third company, and I had reasonable success with the first two. And that does make things easier, because it, especially at the kind of seed stage, especially at the Series A, because you do have a track record, and that opened doors. So when we started the company, we were, and obviously I've got many lessons from all my previous companies. I could talk forever, but one of the first lessons I would have is don't kind of consolidate your product market fit too early. I mean, you need feedback, and you need to figure out what's going on. So in the first few years of the company, we just spent it trying to get feedback from banks about what exactly their problems were, what to build, and so on. Because of my previous track record, we managed to raise seed fund from effectively friends. So when you're in your first startup, friends and family means 20K. When you got friends as VCs, that means about $500,000 to $1 million each. So it's considerably easier. So we did that, and we existed about 4 years like that, because what we're building is a core banking engine. It is a very difficult thing to build, and it takes a long time. And to run a full bank, it takes a lot. So it's a difficult thing to launch an MVP. So because of that, we needed that investment. So I had to persuade our investors to kind of roll the company along at a kind of flat level of growth for the first 3 or 4 years. But then finally, in kind of about 4 years in, we started to sign proper contracts with proper banks. And we could kind of see the inflection point coming, and we actually officially declared an inflection point. And then when we got there, off we went, and it's been pretty stellar growth ever since. So signing the first customers, we got the first customers, and then we pretty rapidly moved through Series A, Series B, C and D. Just roughly speaking, Series A was pre-money 100 million, Series B pre-money 225, Series C pre-money 850, and Series D pre-money 2 billion. And the C and D only happened a few months after one another, which is the end of last year, and probably our timing was spot on. But we spent a tremendous amount of time trying to get all the various pieces of the growth puzzle in sync, hiring in sync, getting international scaling in sync, and then really doubling down on having various notable inflection points. First 4 customers proved that there was a market. The next 10 proved it was scalable. Then the next 50 proved that we could do this globally. Keeping that in sync and getting that in a digestible package for the investors. I'm not saying we did it perfectly, but we kind of did it well enough. I'll also say, in most companies, I think that it does. I will say that there are challenges being scale up, but I think it does get a bit easier as you go on.
Brilliant. Yeah, great advice. Thank you very much. B, you just recently raised 5 million, if I'm not wrong. And tell us about the experience. Were there any unexpected things that you have faced along the way? What was the journey?
So yeah, I guess I can't really talk about fundraising without, I guess, recognizing the fact that I am a woman, and a woman of color as well, within the tech industry. And we know there's been lots of reports that have been published this year and last year about, especially post-pandemic, that less than 2% of funding, I think, globally went to women of color in tech. So I think from my perspective, it was a very kind of fearful experience going into it, especially because we actually, just talking about our journey, is that we started making actually revenue within our first year post founding the company. So we were post revenue. So we are 4 years in when we needed our first funding round. So we went straight for sort of a £5 million ticket as our first round. So it wasn't the case that I had a seed round to build on. So it was one of those things, especially post-pandemic, and the nervousness around the VC, and obviously a lot of the kind of the advice you get as a startup is the biggest thing that you can platform above a platform on top of is when if someone else has trusted you with their money, you can then actually build on that to say, well, they've given our money and you've got a relationship and a network. So we obviously went in cold with a lot of these conversations and relationships. So actually, the way we were received by the market was fantastic, but it was very variable. So again, I have to talk to the fact that a lot of the people across the desk from every single VC, and I spoke to VCs both Europe, UK and US, were pretty much white, middle-class old men sitting across from me. So obviously coming from a healthcare factor, as well as looking at an industry where, or bringing a problem which is a social problem where you want to tackle something across with the diversity and the representation within your algorithms and the impact you want to have is a very difficult conversation to have, especially as not all VCs are impact-focused VCs or outcome-focused VCs. We know that health tech is obviously sometimes very heavy on investment first before people can make money. So there are all of those challenges, and I think some of those challenges, you saw the unconscious bias in the responses and the questions about, suitability of the company, the validity of myself, leading the company. So there is a lot of that questions that you do kind of reflect and ask, would any other person in my shoes get asked that question? And it's really important to recognize that very early on you realize that it's not you, it's them. So it's the wrong person across the table, obviously. And you soon, and I'm really curious about my colleagues next to me, is that just the reflection of the types of questions you get asked is a very good telling to see whether this is the right fit. And it felt a bit like dating, I think, having just been of the generation of the swiping for like Bumble and Tinder. I can tell you it very much felt like that, the awkward introductions and things like that. But when you do find the right person, and our lead investor is MMC, an amazing venture capital fund. They're a B Corp as well. They very much are a firm believer of representation, about backing female CEOs and founders, but also understanding the impact of social impact and what we're trying to achieve. 1 in 2 people get cancer in their lifetime. It's $1 trillion industry spent per annum. Like, this is something that, is going to take probably a decade to solve, but the return is going to be huge. So it's one of those things. I think it was a really interesting experience, but also it brought a lot of the right people to the table, especially when you want to have an alignment of values as a founder, when you're coming at it with a social impact kind of agenda and vision, not necessarily purely looking at kind of the financial gain when it comes to founding your business.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Well, we've got your next venture idea, swiping right on your next investor. So yeah, go for it with that idea, Tinder for investors. Thank you, babe. Got question about how do you balance the need for short-term growth with the need for long-term sustainability, given that you had a record year last year, 50 million revenue. Just tell us about how that journey went and how do you balance the long-term sustainability and the short-term growth of the company?
Yeah, it's interesting. We've become a B Corp in the last few months, and I think part of the reason we did that is because we cared about the core of our product is not particularly sustainable. It's not non-sustainable, but it's not in that area. But the culture and the company, we want to be long-term sustainable from a cultural and impact perspective on wider society. So that's always been part of what we've cared about when we've been developing the company and the culture and the people and the growth. I think from a tech standpoint, and my background is not tech, I'm a domain expert. So I've always been in consumer insight, and then I founded an automation company. So I had to find lots of people who could help me with that. From a tech standpoint, balancing the short and long term, we're in Horizons Week at work this week, and people find it very, very easy to focus very specifically on Horizon 1 and not Horizon 2 and Horizon 3. And when we're building towards a really long-term vision, it's hard to keep, I see my job as keeping people grounded in the vision of where we're going rather than the detail of where we are. And I think from a software perspective, you're always trying to fix technical debt, fix problems, fix bugs, and try and make that next little bit of value. And weighing that up against where we're going 2, 3, 4, 5 years away is probably the biggest long-term challenge we have. And one of the things, so we've taken we've copied Google, and so we've created a Zappi X division, which is just working on things that are 3, 4 years out and not even looking at the immediate return. But I'm in the process of trying to balance the two and try and get the core part of Zappi to think at least a year or so in advance, and Zappi X to think maybe 3 instead of 5. And that is probably the largest tension that we're continuously playing against.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's exciting. Given that you're launching your first satellite next year, when do you know is the right time for scaling up? Is it like before that, after you're finding your, product market fit? When is the right time for scaling a scale up?
Right now.
Right now. All right. Tell us
So
why.
we intend to, hopefully I'm going to sign a contract today for a new satellite, and then that will mean a new launcher. So just keep doubling down. I mean, it's venture. You have to be venturous. So, I mean, the market is not looking great at the moment from an investment point of view, but it takes us, this first satellite 16 months to make. We hope to get to 12 months production. Things are going to be changing there. And the end goal is not changing. People need our data to make smart decisions on how to become, safe to climate and things like that. So we have to keep going, and you need the right investors that have that long-term vision. I heard 10 years, so that's they're a unique set of investors who can wait that long for a return. But you need to find those guys, the impact, the patient guys, and hang on to them and persuade them you're doing the right thing.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Given that was mentioned about the current market, macroeconomic market that we are facing, potential downturns, wanted to ask regarding this specifically, Paul, what recommendation would you share for founders to navigate the current market downturn, right? Given that, again, you might be like a bit later stage.
Presumably raised last year,
yeah.
this, right?
What would you say?
Yeah, I mean, raise your money before the downturn starts. But if you want a more serious answer, first thing is to realize that absolutely no one knows what's going to happen. So do not, and there's far too many people, kind of make money or make headlines by telling you what's going to happen, and then when it doesn't happen, they predict. Because 6 months ago, everybody was going to say, "Oh, we're in a boom time. No one can hire anybody. There's a hiring market out there. Yak, and another. And so no one could be deep. It could be long. It could be a blip, or whatever else. But there's two independent things that you really need to think about. First of all, there are things that are happening in the real economy, and then there's things that are happening in the VC investment economy. Right. So in the real economy, you don't need to know about it. There's a squeeze in living and various things like that. And if you are impacted, or your business is impacted by those types of things, then that is not a joke. So if you're in the type of business which has easily that takes money in the consumer business from very discretionary spending, I think you need to be very cautious and very careful. If you go through all the things, I don't know anything about healthcare, but it's hardly what you call discretionary spending. Same in banks, it's a completely different market, completely different level of cycle, and everything else. So and hopefully with good investors, they will help you navigate the macroeconomic conditions of your own customer market. When it comes to the valuations and the VCs, this is a boom and bust VC industry, right? So the first thing I'd say is that, if you are, you cannot look at the VC investment market as a genuine free market. It's extremely illiquid, right? So in the public markets, when something happens, the price of the shares drops, the valuation drops. That's kind of not what happens. I mean, what happens is investors are either go or no go. And the problem that people face, and people have not faced this before, is that the investors really lose very little by stopping investing for a period of 6 months or 12 months or. And this happened to me twice before. In my first company, kind of 2001, the market dried up. In my second company, 2009, the market dried up. And and the markets can freeze for a very long time, right? So you need to, you kind of think, oh, if I drop the price and things like that. But the problem is that the investors weren't price conscious on the way up, and they're not price conscious on the way down either. So my advice is, first of all, look at the industry, everything else. If you can, whatever you do not. If there's money available, take it. And have a conversation with your existing investors. You might as well have the conversation up front, right? They do not want you to go back for more money. They want you to get new money. But you might as well say, okay, if new money isn't available, what is on the table? Because most of them, especially the early funds, would retain 50 to 60% of their portfolio of their capital for follow-on investments and have that conversation. If you can get through it, though, it is a very, very good time, because when the market is frothy, there's far too much money chasing bad companies, as in companies which will never be viable, never get anywhere. Those companies still create damage. They hoover up the money, but more important for us, they hoover up the people, right? They go into the market, they spend crazy money, and so when those companies stop, and eventually they will stop, finally we'll get a really good rebalancing of talent in the market, and the best companies and the best people will align again, and that is one of the fundamental ways in which you can get a real company. But it's very difficult to hire the best people when everybody's hiring at a crazy rate. So if you can get through it, the best time is just from the kind of bottom of the dip upwards, because that's kind of takeoff time. Yeah.
Awesome. But do you think that the IPO window is closed? Or?
Yes. Oh, no. I mean, it doesn't matter what I think. I don't know anything about IPOs. It definitely is, right? There are no companies IPOing anywhere, right? So, but that's not the end of the world. I mean, if the rest of the market is functioning, the IPO market is just that will come back. And if you look at the companies which IPO'd in the quotes unfashionable times, right? So I remember when Google IPO'd in 2004, declaring interest. I used to work for Google. That people, it was nearly a one-off event. People would go, IPO, I can't even remember what that is. But it was a wonderful time because it got all the attention and they exploded with revenue growth straight afterwards and got a good thing. And the companies that IPO'd in 2009, 2010, again, it's a very, very good time. The companies IPO'd last year, they're probably got mixed feelings because they go, well, we got a lot of money, we got a lot of attention, our share price down 90%, and all our options are underwater and everything else. So that's a problem. Personally, I'd rather not have.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. B, if you could travel back in time and advise yourself, what advice would you give yourself when you started your venture? Would you change anything?
I wonder whether that question's better for these guys, because my back in time isn't that far back. It's only a few years. But I was just thinking actually off the back of what you were saying is that it's so different in health tech because the pandemic offered so many new models of the way that healthcare can be delivered. Actually, this is a really exciting time for healthcare. And what we've seen in the UK, Europe, and actually in the US is the first time we've seen the diversification of trust moving away from centralized government or established bodies towards startups that can actually logistically offer demand quickly, accessibly, and in a very kind of reliable and standardized way. So actually, I think healthcare, anyone in the audience who is looking at doing anything in healthcare, is a really great place to be right now because access to the market is quicker than it was previously. Even access to medical data, both across the UK and US, is a lot more established now because essentially the supply chains now have been established as a result of the COVID supply chains. So it's one of those things that routes to market are much more easier, and there's a lot more capital as well, both from a B2C and a B2B perspective, and being able to get any kind of health tech or service-driven solution into into companies. So I think that's a really exciting place. From a kind of advice perspective, I think this is mainly for maybe new startup founders, which would be really interesting to see how you all in the crowd receive this, and also my experienced colleagues here is that as a new founder, obviously you're expecting perfection, and I think that's really hard to achieve. And often the first thing you could constantly are told about is, you need to fail fast, fail early, and learn. And the dichotomy of that is the fact that when you're in healthcare, actually, a failure can often mean that, someone will die as a result. So it's balancing that conundrum of how do you do it in a way that you can de-risk failure, that you can fail well but fail safely. And that's something that I think if we had taken that even earlier, we could have actually adopted that and maybe, gone faster earlier on. And I think that's the same for all startups where it's a first-time company founder or startup where they tread a bit more carefully and a bit more lightly rather than, I guess, raising capital from friends straight away and taking that trust on board, which is a great place to be.
So fail fast, move forward, break things. Is that the motto?
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Awesome. Stephen, what are the biggest misconceptions for achieving rapid growth that usually founders and executives have?
Biggest misconceptions?
Yes.
I don't know. I think so. The balance when you're pushing for significant growth. Well, but sometimes the measure of significant revenue growth is an outcome, not an input, right? So you can just throw salespeople at it, but it tends to be a bad idea. So what you're always balancing and what you talked about this, Paul, as well, is your product and product market fit, and then the scaling of that product market fit. So when we grew very rapidly in our earlier days, and we're now growing more rapidly than we were 3 years ago. And I think that's related. We had a pivot about 4 years ago of where the tech fit was. And the growth is an outcome of the product market fit. And I think that's the critical thing that you have to work on. And it's too easy, I think, when you've got partial fit, to think that you're there and pile, again, sales and marketing resource at it when you're really too early. And I think the holding back until you're really convinced about the product, which is exactly what you did by the sounds of it, probably better than us. It is really hard to do because you've got investors jumping down your back and saying, why aren't you growing, why aren't you growing? And in order to be a fast growth startup, you've got to be fast growth. But sometimes to create long-term fast growth, you've got to back off and focus on product market fit. And getting that discipline is hard, and we've failed multiple times doing that, I think. But that would be my advice.
Awesome. This is a question for all panelists, but I start with you, Anthony. What keeps you awake at night as a founder right now? I mean, you're awake, but yeah. I mean.
So I think, we've got technology risks, we've got launch risks, we've got market risks, we've got currently investment risks. But I think I wake up and want to make sure that I've explored every avenue well. And sometimes you think, did we look at this? Did we look at that? We have a lot of inbound leads at the moment, and making a selection, because everyone's interested in the data and satellites, but making that correct selection, holding off on where you're going to put your resources, and making sure that you can be fast, but also be very selective on that winning case. It's quite a balance, and yeah.
So how do you prioritize opportunities? Because so many opportunities coming left and right, but you would like to focus on a narrow area, right?
So we always look at the customer first, and what's the value proposition to them, find that largest value proposition, find the largest market, and then go and work out whether it can be done. So yeah, it's really customer first.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going backwards again, so what would you say?
Yeah, so it always used to be cash.
Okay.
So certainly in the first 5, 6, 7 years, the thing that keeps you up awake at night is cash and paying people's salaries at the end of the month. And how much cash you can have as a safety net. So cash was the first thing. I think now it's moved much more. I still worry about cash. Much more to culture. So we're at almost 300 people. We've got plans. We're in an investment round right now. I wish it had been last year, but I think we will raise, and then we'll be pushing. So we're at 300 now. We've got plans to get to 600, then 900, and so I worry about culture. So as you grow, you start bringing in people from a corporate background who are great and wonderful and have wonderful ideas, but it reduces the sort of entrepreneurial nature of the company that you started. I worry about politics. I worry about people coming together. I worry about, when you're not going to the office, do you get that team? Do you get that trust that you get from face to face? So those are the things that worry me now.
Awesome. Just a question about, as you mentioned, you're raising right now. For fellow founders in the room that's also looking into raising within this current market situation, what advice would you give, because you're experiencing it, right?
Just don't.
Just don't.
just do it last year. So we're in the process of getting offers in. It's just hard. It's just really hard. And the point is, I was listening to someone talking about it the other day. So 2 years ago, they've got a 10-year fund, right? So 20 years ago, that fund would be spent in the first 4 years. Now, or 2 years ago, that fund was spent in a year. So suddenly, they're going back to thinking, no, let's get back to normal. I can spend the fund over 4 years. In which case, why on earth would you invest in anything now? Why would you not just wait? Now, there are people with money out there It's just fewer of them, and they have very little sort of competitive pressure to push. So it's a hard time to raise. Having said that, there is money out there. There are companies that will help, but it's the time to preserve cash, look at debt. We're just signing up debt, actually. So our debt providers are much more amenable. They've known us. They've grown with us over the last 5 years. Our problem is that our current VCs are tapped out towards the end of their funds. So it's a hard time. Just be really careful on cash.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great advice. Look after your pockets. Same question.
Yeah, absolutely. Just building on what you said as well is that we're now in that growth stage where we really need to prioritize where we put our efforts in, and we're getting a lot of demand for. So we, as I said before, is we currently service actually much of the NHS, and now with the fundraise we're able to diversify that. But we're getting demand from like pharmacy chains, as well as kind of insurance, employee benefit schemes, corporate providers, and then also demand looking at both in the US and in Europe. And a lot of that is, whilst it's exciting, it's about, okay, we need to prioritize where we invest efforts, because to your point, you can end up burning a lot of cash very quickly as you look to grow. And we need to manage that growth in line with actually in a steady way that we can maintain culture and maintain our cash flow, as you mentioned, but also continue to scale in line with our own aspirations and objectives. So just in that trajectory, I think a lot of it is being able to consolidate and make sure that we make it in a more stepwise approach.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give talk about something else. So for us, it was culture. We were pre-pandemic. We were a super collaborative, very, very high touch point team-based company, all in the one office. The work from home situation was a disaster for us completely. It was okay for the first few months, but it just got worse and worse and worse. And what had become a tremendous team just gradually unraveled. And of all the problems I faced, running out of money, funding, customers, whatever, nothing worried me as much as that. But it's got a pretty happy ending, or a pretty good point now. Everybody's back in the office, the morale's sky high, and the teamwork's back again. But that was something that completely was not prepared for, and was an existential worry.
So how's the policy now? People can work from home, or they're back in the office?
No, we planned this for a very, very, very long time, and we said, look, it has to be one thing or another. So we say on Thought Machine, you got 4 days in the office. We actually, to encourage people back, we offered everybody, so we offered 2 options, 4 days or 3 days. And we said, if you do 4 days, we'll give you 15% pay rise. And because we needed a kind of carrot. You can't just say you have to do it. And that was a great psychological boost. It was a time of rising in salaries anyway. So, but that was tremendously successful. Everybody got back in. Everybody thought that they were being encouraged back in and not forced back in, and that basically worked. So 90% of people are on 4 days. A few people are on 3 days, and a few people quit. But all in all, it was a good outcome.
I think you took a better strategy than Elon Musk, right? Just trying to fire everyone. Awesome. I've got another question for the whole panel. So again, going backwards. What excites you the most about the next decade in your industry? So each of the industry, because you come from very different industries. Next decade, what excites you?
What's going to happen?
Where do you see it? What happened?
Oh, wow. So I think for space,
yes.
we're going to become, I think space data is going to really hit the consumers and be relevant to a lot more people. So everyone's maybe aware of GPS and sat nav and everything in your pocket, but that's just one aspect. So space data, looking at the Earth from high, and holding people accountable and directing people for their resources. So I think for space, things have just started. The access to space has really reduced in cost. You basically you're charged per kilogram that you launch. I paid $50,000 for it to launch a kilogram into space. And now I'm paying $5,000. So we optimize now for performance and not for saving that mass and filing off bits. So it just changes the whole paradigm for what we can do. And that using commercial off-the-shelf equipment. So you can virtually launch your iPhone into space because it has a communicator on it, has a camera, has the apps and everything. So, yeah, it's amazing things are happening, and more amazing things are going to happen.
Awesome. Would it be useful to launch our iPhone into space?
Well, someone has. So someone essentially has, but it's a proof of concept that you can use commercial off the shelf. But we've gone for the much larger form factor, like mini bar size, and so you can really, we're going for the performance, and that's why we're 60 times better than anything else in space for what we do. It's because why not? Just think big and go for it, and guess what? Looking at human activity is really important at the moment.
Absolutely. It's the next frontier, isn't it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Same question. What excites you about the next 10 years?
Yeah, so we're a core component and trying to be a core component of the CMO's tech stack. And if I think about the marketing industry generally, it is moving in the direction of being able to build new products and services so much quicker. New advertising campaigns, new types of communication, new ways of dealing with customers so much quicker. To do that, people need data to make iterative learning decisions. So that's the direction of the market. What does that mean? It means that you just have a lot more choice, a lot more options, a lot more interesting new ideas coming to market, and we want to help fuel that.
Fantastic. Thank you. So data explosion, right? Exactly.
Well, there's a data explosion anyway. It's about managing, analyzing, and making genuine insight out of that data explosion.
Absolutely. I think the last data was like 99% of the data is wasted, something like that.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Same question.
Amazing. So yeah, for us, I guess, just talking at See the Signs to start off with is, we essentially currently have about 10 million patient records in our model. As we're scaling that, we are going to get to a place where we can actually predict when anyone will get any type of cancer at what point in their lives prior to developing any signs, symptoms, or risk factors, and taking it from population-based health completely down to personalized levels to say, actually, depending on your environment, your lifestyle, your genetics, your family history, what types of cancers you're at risk of, so we can funnel you into the correct screening programs and tests and diagnostics. So for the next decade for us, it'd be actually creating a future where actually every patient survives cancer. For healthcare more widely, there's a huge opportunity where we know that currently health data sits in silos and data banks without them actually being utilized for your own personal benefit. So I think there'll be a lot more democratization of access for that health data for you to be able to access that and use that in a more meaningful way for your own personal risk and your family's risk, but also the use of things like direct access testing, so point of care testing, and all the genetic testing that you're seeing at the moment, for that to be a lot more accessible but meaningful in a way to say, what does it mean for me and my future and my healthcare? As more novel diagnostics come out and therapeutics come out, you'll see that actually survivalship and longevity will play a really key role in that, as more health data can be accessible for you on a personal level.
Can we beat cancer within the next 10 years?
Absolutely.
That's it. Thank you for your work to make that happen.
So two things. First of all, we're at a great London tech event and great UK tech event. So I think something that'll be very dramatic is the number of UK tech companies IPOing at scale. So in the next 10 years, I'd say even in the next 5 years, there will be 10 to 20 that will IPO at scale. And by the scale, I mean they'll be in the FTSE 100. And this will have dramatic impact on the retail investor community in the country, because if you just compare the FTSE 100 with the S&P 500 of the last 20 years, it's pretty dismal. You need super high growth companies. Super high growth companies are the real drivers of a company's GDP and commercial success. It raises all boats, and being able to do something like that will be great. We used to have them, right? We had great companies like Vodafone. We had great company, and then we had the banks who went through scale, and then that didn't end well. So there's been a gap that's been sitting there for a long time. The retailers aren't going to do it, but the tech companies can do it, and this will be transformational. So it feels like we've got a vibrant community today, but that'll be nothing. But in my own personal industry, there's been too much. There's been a bunch of legacy providers developing pretty old-fashioned shoddy technology and selling it to banks because they've got a stranglehold in the market, and that will end. and the B2B fintech community will take over. It's far better in terms of product quality, and it's far better in terms of customer focus.
Awesome. Will the bank survive?
The banks will survive. So this is a question, but I think there will be a large set of mergers in banks. I think that there's three players in the space. There's the traditional banks. There's the fintech, the B2C fintechs, as which we all know about, and then there's the tech giants. And in 10 years' time, they will all look the same, as in they'll be running the same platform, the same sort of apps, same sort of products. But anybody who takes a different path and thinks that from the traditional banking industry, who thinks they can survive in a non-completely fully digital world, will not survive. Now, because it's a special industry and you can't just let banks go under, that means they'll just be acquired, right? They're not going to actually go under, because that doesn't really happen in the banking industry. But unless banks change, those names will disappear.
Awesome, thank you. Before we open up to 2 questions to the audience, can we ask questions? Yeah, okay. Just going to ask you the last question. Would you recommend to the audience, to the founders, to apply for TechNation? Hands up. Yes. Awesome. It was biased, by the way, so let's do it. Yeah, questions to audience, if you can. Has anyone got questions? Please, yeah.
Hi, everyone. First of all, just thank all of you. I found every single thing that you said very insightful. I wanted to ask questions to, I guess, actually all of you about funding and why, perhaps you have, but you haven't mentioned it, but why you chose not to lean on sort of government funding. So I'm talking about the BBBs, the British Business Bank type funding, BPC, British Patient Capital. I used to work for these institutions, so I'm now curious as to, the pros and the cons of perhaps taking or not taking funding from them.
I've got a very simple answer. The British Patient Capital are an investor in Thought Machine. I'm very happy and they're wonderful. It's just that they typically follow rounds, not lead them. So as long as we had other investors there. But I was extremely happy to take the money. But as I said, that was part of the package, not the full package.
Does anyone else would like to answer that? Or?
Yeah, we talked to the BBA, and again, our experience was very good. It didn't work at that time. I can't remember the details, but we definitely would have taken capital if it was the right fit.
Hopefully this time, right?
Definitely not this time. Definitely, it's just too small around.
All right. Question? Yeah. Yeah, just microphone coming. Yeah.
Hi everyone, thank you. My name is Sophia and I run a company called Tech for Non-Techies. So if you want to learn about technology, listen to our podcast, Tech for Non-Techies. Now, for the founders, my question is, what, for each one of you, what has been the hardest role to recruit for and why?
It's the last question, by the way, before we run out of time. Please. Go for it, Anthony.
The first ones were always the hardest.
The first one.
Because there's a big risk for the employee. But yeah, I think everything from the tech side, getting to a recruiter, senior management, CFOs, salespeople, because you're cash limited. You have to really sell the vision of the company and get people to buy in, to believe in what you're doing, and try and get them to take less pay for a better opportunity. So they've all been tough.
I'd say very specifically product. I think we've just hired a great new CPO, and he's brilliant. We've hired some new product people, but product is a really hard area. It's really important, but it doesn't have a long history as a profession. It's just a tough space. Engineering is much easier. I don't know. That's our experience.
Yeah, I would say, we joke the first person I hired was a recruiter and the first person he picked was another recruiter. And that certainly made it easier. So having full-time recruiters in the team, I would always recommend that and not be at the mercy of agencies. But I would say, similar thing, product management as a skill is nearly impossible because everybody's a stakeholder in the company. And you range from everybody having an opinion and everybody having competing priorities, and to get that, especially in an enterprise B2B company, I thought was pretty hard. And it's kind of the thing I did myself. So the kind of taking my own job, which I wasn't too happy about letting go on. So that was a hard role.
Appreciate that. Have you got any to add?
So interesting. We're about 55 people at the moment, and product and tech was actually easier to hire from. And I wonder whether part of the pandemic, a lot of people came out of it saying that they want to work in an organization where there's very strong social value, social impact. So we found that easier. I think the roles we found harder to recruit for are things like the kind of allied HR, those types of project management type roles. We found a lot harder to find the right skill set. So lots in the pipeline, not enough to get through the finish line.
Awesome. Well, we ran out of time. Just going to go for the last remark, 10 seconds each. If you can go for, like, what advice would you give? Last remark, that's everything.
Believe in yourself. Go big, go fast.
Awesome.
Those sort of things.
Yeah, go for it. Good luck.
At talking to our stage at the moment, I think networks and support is really, really important. So an organization like Tech Nation is actually really, really fantastic in giving you that network, that support, but also that being able to, it's very hard to meet other CEOs and founders in your space and have a safe space to just have that cathartic nature of what's going on, how did you do that, shared resources, shared experiences. So that Tech Nation really gives you that platform. So I would genuinely redirect your call to action is to apply for Tech Nation.
Please find me after the event.
I would back that completely. Investors, board members, all these people, they're really good for advice and use it, but there's nothing like talking to other founders, because I think safe space is the word. You can just let off and they will not judge you, and they will be on your side. And unless they're your most direct competitor, they will help you, and they'll do it for free without any particular skin in the game. And that is always the encouragement, I thought. And never look at a company that's kind of bigger than yours, because that's like being a small kid and being jealous of being a bigger kid. You'll get there, right? It's just there's a natural stage of growth. Enjoy where you're at the current stage. Talk to people. There are a few stages there, and just say, yeah, I'm going to get there, but never feel bad that you haven't got there already.
Awesome. And my advice would be apply for our programs, Tech Nation. Only 2 weeks left, so please visit our website, technation.io, and you will find a specific program that is suitable to your business and apply for it. Well, thank you very much. Please shout, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.